It was a quiet Sunday morning, May 17th, 2015. Lafayette City was still half asleep when a sudden 911 call broke the silence. A man's voice, shaking and panicked, told the operator that someone had been shot, maybe even dead. Police rushed to the scene, a small house tucked away in a peaceful neighborhood. Inside, they found 29-year-old Trey Kulie lying on the floor, a gunshot wound to his head. Blood was pooling beneath him, and the air smelled of gunpowder and shock. Near him sat Jessica, his fiancée, frozen, crying uncontrollably, whispering again and again, "It just went off. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." She told police that Trey had been cleaning his gun that morning, something he did often. She said she'd picked it up, just curious, and it fired by accident. The officers looked around. The house was small but neat. Nothing seemed out of place. The gun, a .45 caliber pistol, was found on the floor near Trey's body. But one thing didn't feel right. Trey was known to be careful with weapons. Friends called him Mr. Safety. How could a man like that die from his own gun by accident? The detectives noted every detail: the angle of the wound, the distance of the shot, the traces of gunpowder on Jessica's hands. She kept repeating that she loved him, that it was just a horrible mistake. But in Trey's family's eyes, something felt wrong. This wasn't just an accident. It was too sudden, too quiet, too perfect. As Trey's body was taken away, one of the officers whispered, "Something about this doesn't add up." And just like that, a story of love and laughter turned into a mystery, a case that would test the limits of truth, science, and justice. The news of Trey's death spread like wildfire through the small Lafayette community. By noon, his family had gathered outside the hospital, stunned, broken, and searching for answers that no one seemed able to give. Trey wasn't just another young man. He was the kind of person people remembered. A kind smile, a calm voice, and a heart that always leaned toward helping others. His mother, Linda, couldn't stop shaking her head in disbelief. "He was so careful with guns," she said softly. "He taught everyone else how to handle them. This doesn't make sense." Jessica sat apart, her hands trembling as police spoke to her again. She told the same story. It was an accident. She loved Trey. They were planning their wedding. They had their future all mapped out. But Trey's family couldn't accept it. Not yet. They knew Trey. They knew how disciplined he was, especially when it came to firearms. His father, a hunter and former military man, had drilled safety into him from a young age. That's why, when investigators asked about his habits, every friend said the same thing. Trey would never hand someone a loaded gun. Never. The coroner's preliminary report didn't clear things up either. The bullet entered from a strange angle, not one that matched Jessica's story. It wasn't impossible, but it didn't quite fit. Jessica cried through every question, every hour. She said they were laughing just moments before it happened. She picked up the gun, thinking it was safe, and suddenly everything went black. Days later, when Trey was finally laid to rest, hundreds showed up. Friends, co-workers, and people who barely knew him all stood in silence as the casket was lowered. But among the whispers and tears, one quiet promise was made. His family would find the truth, even if it meant uncovering something darker than anyone expected. Detectives began digging deeper into the case, determined to find out what really happened that morning. Jessica's story was simple, too simple perhaps. She said Trey was cleaning the gun and she accidentally fired it. But when investigators replayed the scene, the pieces didn't fit neatly together. The pistol, for instance, was found on the floor, far from where Jessica claimed she dropped it. There were no cleaning tools nearby, no oil, no cloth, nothing to suggest Trey had actually been cleaning that weapon. And then there was the gunshot residue, the faint chemical trace left behind when a firearm is discharged. Tests showed a heavy concentration of residue on Jessica's right hand and very little on Trey's. Detectives also noticed something else: the distance of the shot. The wound on Trey's head wasn't a close contact injury. It appeared to have been fired from several feet away. That didn't align with an accidental discharge. When they questioned Jessica again, she looked exhausted and nervous. Her story didn't change, but her tone did. She cried less this time. She looked down more often, avoiding eye contact. Investigators started to piece together the last few days of Trey's life. Friends told them that the couple had been arguing recently, small things, but growing in intensity. One friend even mentioned that Trey had confided in him, saying he was having second thoughts about the relationship. But when police checked Jessica's phone, they found nothing. No texts, no arguments, no threats. It was clean. Too clean, as if someone had deleted everything. Weeks turned into months, and without solid evidence, the case began to lose momentum. It looked like it might be labeled an accident after all, another tragic story in a quiet Louisiana town. But then, something unexpected happened. Trey's family hired a private investigator, hoping for answers the police couldn't find. He re-examined every photo, every report, every inch of evidence, and soon noticed something that everyone else had missed. A single bullet hole, not in the wall, not in the floor, but in a nearby mirror. A shot that didn't match the trajectory described in Jessica's statement, a bullet that seemed to come from a completely different direction. This discovery changed everything. The accident theory began to fall apart, and what had once looked like a tragic mistake now started to look a lot more like murder. The private investigator's discovery of that mirror changed the entire direction of the case. He immediately called the police, and within days, the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office reopened the file. When forensic experts re-examined the scene, they realized something shocking. The bullet found inside the wall didn't match the supposed firing position. According to Jessica's story, she was standing just a few feet away from Trey when the gun went off. But the trajectory told a different tale, one that suggested she was standing much farther back, possibly near the doorway. A forensic reconstruction expert was brought in. Using advanced 3D imaging, he recreated the moment of the shooting, the angle, the distance, the bullet's path. The results were clear. This could not have been an accident. The report concluded that the bullet entered Trey's head from a downward angle, meaning the shooter was standing up, aiming the gun slightly downward. It was deliberate, controlled. The investigators quietly built their case. They didn't tell Jessica. They wanted her to stay calm, unaware that the truth was closing in. Then came the final blow, a retest of the gun itself. The magic bullet theory, as it was later called, referred to how a single bullet traveled in a way that didn't match her description. Forensics proved that the trigger pressure on that model was heavy. It couldn't have gone off easily. Someone had to pull it, intentionally. The DA's office decided to move forward. Months of quiet preparation led to Jessica's arrest on second-degree murder. She was calm when police arrived at her workplace. She didn't fight, didn't cry, didn't ask questions. She just said softly, "I knew this day would come." During trial, the prosecution presented the physical evidence, the trajectory, the gun residue, and the inconsistencies in Jessica's story. The defense argued it was still an accident, a moment of panic and confusion. But the jury didn't buy it. The science was too strong, the lies too thin. After long deliberation, the verdict was read: guilty. Jessica was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the courtroom fell silent, Trey's mother closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Justice, at last, but at a cost no one would ever forget. Years have passed since that tragic morning in Lafayette. The house where it all happened stands quiet now. The paint faded, the windows covered, the laughter long gone. Neighbors still remember the sound of sirens echoing through the street, and how life never felt quite the same again. Trey's family visits his grave often. His mother brings fresh flowers every Sunday, just like she used to do when he was alive. Sometimes she sits there in silence, tracing her fingers across his name, whispering softly, "We kept our promise, Trey. We found the truth." For them, justice didn't erase the pain, it just gave it meaning. They say healing doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from knowing what really happened. Jessica remains behind bars, serving her life sentence. She never gave a new version of her story. Some people still believe it was an accident. Others are certain it was murder. But the truth, the real truth, is known only to two people, and one of them is gone. In the end, the case became a quiet reminder of how fragile life can be, how a single moment, a single decision, can destroy everything we love. For the detectives, it was another case closed. For the family, it was closure, not peace. And for those who remember Trey Kulie, it was the story of a kind man taken too soon by someone who once said she loved him.